This is CBC Here and Now.
Goodbye grass, hello blowing snow and howling winds. It's a snow day for eastern Newfoundland after months of mild weather.
Still no plans to weather the coming financial storm.
We'll have a balanced, measured, fair approach after broad public consultations.
Coming up on Here and Now.
To be honest, I think the workers' fairs have been based on past experiences. You know, there's been some tough budgets.
And in the second half of Here and Now, our Jane 80 talks to the Federation of Labor about the fear of job losses and cuts to the public service. Good evening and welcome to Here and Now. I'm Peter Cowan. We'll start tonight with that storm that's hitting the east coast right now. Buses in the St. John's area were pulled off the roads about an hour ago. And that means many businesses have already shut down for the day. Just ahead, Jeremy Eaton has the latest on how the city is planning to clean up all of this. But first, let's go to Carolyn, who's filling in for Ashley today. Carolyn, how much snow are we going to get?
Well, Peter, if you're on the Avalon Peninsula, it looks like we could be getting another 15 to 25 centimeters of snow on top of what fell today. Here's a look at the satellite and radar shot. You can see the beast of a storm that is upon us right now. We have a lot of warnings in place, a winter storm warning for the Avalon, Bonavista North, and Bonavista Peninsula. A total of 20 to 35 centimeters of snow expected with this system, and we have a special weather statement in effect as well for much of the northeast coast. About 10 to 15 centimeters of snow in those areas. And on the northern peninsula, snowfall warning in place. So the snow starts tonight and will continue until Saturday morning. So it's a bit of a slow burn there, 15 to 25 centimeters of snow expected there, and could be some more coming on Saturday night. So looking at some totals for this evening for St. John's, here's that 15 to 25 centimeters of snow. You can see with that live shot how windy it is out there. Lots of blowing snow. Northeasterly winds 60, gusting to 80, could be upwards of 100 along the coast. For the central areas, Gander, Grand Falls, about 5 to 10 centimeters of snow yet to come tonight. 5 centimeters for the Marystown area and some flurries there on the west coast. So in Labrador, really the weather story is in the west, minus 38 as the wind chill overnight for Lab City. So very cold night, but not much else happening. A few flurries expected there. Really the stormy weather will move into those areas tomorrow and continue through the weekend. We do have the snowfall warning in effect. Still a bit of uncertainty, but lots of wind and snow coming, 20 to 40 centimeters expected with that system. I'll have more details a bit later. But first, let's check in with Jeremy, poor Jeremy Eaton, who is outside in the middle of this storm right now. Jeremy, how are you doing?
To be honest, I've had better days. So when the snow blows and hits you in the face, it hurts. It hurts. Anyways, it's not about me. So as you can see, there's not a lot of traffic here on the parkway behind us. That's because there's not many people out on the road because the snow, as Carolyn just said, is expected to pick up overnight. Now, I did go up to pick up my daughter about 2 hours ago, so I drove to the west end and back here to work, and the roads are pretty greasy. There's a lot of plows out. I saw at least 3 when I was out on that drive, but there's a lot of snow down. So if people are driving, you should probably want to take your time. But earlier today, I spoke with City Councillor Sandy Hickman, and he says not to worry, the city has a plan to clean all this up.
The storm started to roll in, as predicted, around noon.
Staff are well trained, of course, and they've had a couple of smaller storms, so they're quite acquainted with their routes. The equipment, though, is in excellent shape. Not much in for repairs right now, so that's great, and we are ready to roll.
The Newfoundland and Labrador English School District got a jump on things, shutting down schools in the metro area for the afternoon. With Snowmageddon fresh in most everyone's minds, this Sobeys saw a steady stream of folks looking to stock up. While this storm will look a lot different than the record breaker last year, some people can expect to see the snow piling up. You mix in high winds, and it won't be a fun night. But the city says no need to panic.
St. John's is used to snow, and the city of St. John's has done a great job over the years of adjusting, of learning, of new equipment, new routing, and we're actually adjusting routes as we go as the city expands as well. But we've come a long way in snow clearing, and I think you'll see a very good response for this storm.
The city has 5 parking restrictions in place, but this year there's a new one, the 24-hour parking ban. That means that cars parked outside of the downtown core that are subject to the overnight winter parking ban have to get vehicles off the streets for 24 hours. That'll give crews time to clean up.
As of 6 o'clock this evening, Thursday, we will enact our 24-hour restriction, and that will continue throughout Friday, and we will let citizens know when that is off. If once the clear up is done and the roads are clear, that will go back to the usual just overnight parking restriction.
While the snow will be a pain for some, it doesn't seem to bother everyone. Because even in a snowstorm, there's always a runner somewhere on the streets of St. John's.
I can tell you right now, this is certainly bothering me. I spoke with the Newfoundland and Labrador English School District earlier this afternoon, and they said they'll make a decision on whether schools will open tomorrow morning at 6 a.m. But there's something else that's been going around the internet and that I've been hearing from some of my friends. Now, due to the COVID-19 global pandemic, a lot of people are working from home. So what probably would have been a snow day today and maybe one tomorrow no longer exists, because all they got to do is roll out of bed and log on. So when they're out shoveling, they'll probably be grunting a little bit louder and maybe a little bit more than usual now that they don't have that extra long weekend coming up. But don't worry, we'll be back to tell you all about the storm later on the show and on the news tomorrow. Reporting live for Here Now, I'm Jeremy Eaton in St. John's.
Well, to other news now, a teacher at Roncalli Central High School in Avondale has been under suspension while police conduct a lengthy investigation into his actions towards a former student. 38-year-old Noel Strapp was arrested today on charges of sexual assault and sexual exploitation. That's related to a number of incidents said to have happened between 2014 and 2016. RCMP in Holyrood have been investigating Strapp since November of 2019. According to police, he's been suspended from teaching ever since. Strapp, who's from Harbour, Maine, was released from custody on a number of conditions today. He's scheduled to appear in court in early March. There's another case of COVID-19 in the province, and it's connected to a case revealed yesterday on board a Marine Atlantic ferry. The person worked on board the Blue Petite along a co-worker from Nova Scotia who also tested positive for the virus. The latest case is a man in his 60s. He's from central Newfoundland and he's self-isolating at home. Now, despite the second confirmed case this week, Marine Atlantic says there's still a low risk for passengers compared to employees.
The employees, when you look at, they work in the same areas, they sleep on the vessel for a two-week span, they eat their meals in the same areas. So right now, when we look at the employee infections versus the risk to passengers, Public Health has deemed it low risk. They deem it low risk for the passengers due to the nature of the travel. They're on the vessel for a short period of time in isolation with a number of measures to protect their health, whereas our employees are in the same locations with each other for that 2-week period.
Now, the Blue Petite is off the Gulf Run. It's tied up with 65 workers isolating on board waiting for test results. The vessel Atlantic Vision will be placed on the run departing from Nova Scotia this evening.
Now to the election now. On the campaign trail today, the Liberals are promising to improve education for those who want to work in the province's booming technology sector. But it's not clear how much this will cost or if the province has the money needed for all the funding announcements it's been making. Here Now's Mark Quinn explains.
Another day of the 2021 provincial election campaign and another promise from the Liberals to expand services. Today, Andrew Furey says his government will help local companies like Verafin and Kraken Robotics find local, skilled labor.
There is an employment gap. So this is a great opportunity for us to give skills to young people. These are the kind of targeted investments, though, that are important in the future. So we'll look at finding that money internally within the education budget.
There has been a lot of talk about spending more.
There is a space in that hospital for a PET scanner.
And spending what we already have more wisely. But at a time when the province is facing a fiscal crisis, no one is talking about spending less.
I mean, it's no secret. There's by our estimate, an $800 million fiscal gap that's been booked by other governments year after year. We need to
We need the courage to kind of look at that and fix that.
Fury says the first step is dealing with the multi-billion-dollar Muskrat Falls project with help from the federal government.
The economic impact and the fiscal burden of Muskrat Falls is now real. We need to work with our federal partners to ensure that we have a new financial deal for Muskrat Falls so that it doesn't unduly harm Newfoundland and Labradorians.
At the ballot boxes, voters are being asked to take a leap of faith. It's not clear exactly how a re-elected Liberal government will avert a fiscal crisis. Is Fury saying, just trust me?
Well, some of that is trust for sure, but we'll have a balanced, measured, fair approach after broad public consultations. There is no simple solution to this. There's not going to be an incredibly blunt and frightful budget that shocks everybody into their basements. That's not going to happen.
With a winter storm coming, the Liberals are hunkering down in St. John's today, and the PCs are expected to stay in Clarenville overnight. We're seeing one of the consequences of calling an election during the winter, but we still don't know how either party plans to weather the coming financial storm. Mark Quinn, CBC News, St. John's.
And the PCs turned their attention today to honesty and integrity in politics. In an address streamed live via Facebook from Marystown, party leader Ches Crosby accused the Liberals of corruption and cronyism and made some lofty ethical promises of his own.
Liberal corruption has cost our province opportunities and jobs. No investor wants to bring their dollars to a jurisdiction where the scales are tipped in favor of political insiders. Cleaning up corruption is one thing we must do to bring investment and jobs back to our province.
Now, Crosby promised a review of the MHA Code of Conduct and says he'll bring into law honesty in politics legislation, setting up what he calls the toughest anti-corruption policies in the country. Crosby stressed that bad behavior will not be tolerated in any government that he leads.
A government I lead will make honest, open, ethical government a banner above our door. We expect voters to hold us to this higher standard and demand results. Any government that's not willing to be...
Crosby said he will also take steps to reform democracy in the province, including legislation that will allow voters to boot out politicians who are not doing their jobs. Meanwhile, Liberal Andrew Parsons reacted to Crosby's comments. The candidate for Burgeo-Lapoile says the PCs lack any real ideas and are resorting to unfounded smear campaigns.
The NDP, meanwhile, they're in Labrador today talking about medical transportation. The promise? Well, to give money up front for people who need to travel to get treatment on the island. Right now, you can get half the cost of your flight up front, but you have to apply weeks in advance, something that's not always practical.
We're in a reimbursement system. People don't have the money now. So people have to fundraise. And that's the thing, Peter. People are fundraising to try to get people to their basic diagnostic tests, go get an echogram, go out for a heart appointment. People shouldn't have to fundraise for that. That should be upfront costs looked after by the medical service.
The party's leader, Alison Coffin, is promising to expand coverage as well. Right now, the province will pay for the first $1,000 of travel costs. After that, it's covered at 50 or 75%. She'd like to see it all paid for, but isn't revealing any specifics, like how quickly she'd do it, and she doesn't know how much that would cost the government.
I think that we need to look at exactly what the costs are going to be and then adjust that cap accordingly. Certainly what we would like to see is that all costs of medical transportation is fully covered.
Well, staying in Labrador, some upset on the North Coast where the Liberals are running a white candidate named Devin Ryan. Torngat Mountains is largely an Indigenous district, and according to Andrea Anderson, who grew up in Makovic, parachuting someone into a region facing complex issues is doing the constituents a disservice.
This is the hardest district in the province, with food insecurity, housing crisis, lack of access to healthcare, transportation issues. Our basic needs are not met by this province, and the Torngat district is a lot of times put on the back burner for a lot of the decisions that this province makes. And so having him come in and try to represent this region when he has no history, he's never grown up there, I don't even think he's actually visited the region, it goes to show how the Liberal Party feels about the Torngat district. And it's I know they are stating that they wanted a learning experience for a young political leader. So why not address this to our local youth? I know they did try and connect to a few people, younger people to run, but a lot of people felt pressured by the Liberal Party. It wasn't that let's do this as a learning experience, you'll gain information on how the democratic system works in our province, but it was more like, hey, can you run against Leela in the election in a few weeks? It wasn't like, let's bring you into this type of learning experience. But yes, having Mr. Ryan in this position, it just shows that the province, I guess the Liberal Party, is okay with modern day colonialism and allowing a white male come in and try to represent Indigenous issues. And our communities, the Innu and the Inuit communities in this region, are very not confrontational. Indigenous culture, we don't like conflict. So people will meet him with open arms and they will express our daily struggles that we face on a regular basis. But at what expense? This is creating lateral trauma to the people in this region to have to re-explain our struggles to a white person who is going to try and represent us. And the province, and I guess the Liberal Party, just does not recognize that is white privilege and that is modern day colonization, and it needs to stop. And they don't understand how bad this looks to our district, that they're okay with doing this. I mean, in my opinion, they just should have never ran anyone. So for the Innu people of the district, AG, Lista, with that sound. And then for the Inuit, Ukwa Piliriatsa Piani Lavut Niaruruk. And then for the settlers, it's go out and vote on February 13th.
Well, Devin Ryan sought the Turngat Mountains nomination after losing the Liberal nomination in Labrador West. He spoke with Here and Now's Katie Breen earlier today.
Have you ever been to the communities in the district?
So I haven't been as far as Nain before, but I'm really looking forward to getting to Nain because I hear how beautiful it is. Lots of my friends participate in Kane's Quest, and they're always talking about how beautiful it is, so I'm really looking forward to it. When you say you haven't been as far as Nain, have you been to the other communities? Just as far as Northwest River before for some of the competitions that I've competed in high school and such.
Okay, so not actually to the North Coast?
No.
So how familiar are you then with the issues facing that region?
So of course, Katie, you know, with any region I run in, there's always going to be issues that I'm not familiar with, as you may understand. But the thing is, I'm very motivated and very understanding, and I'm always up for listening to the constituencies of the district. So when I look at, you know, some of the problems that I may not be 100% familiar with, I'm really just looking forward to getting out there campaigning and really just trying to see where I can help at best as possible. You know, right now I'm not really focused on the criticism. I'm really just focused on all the positives that's coming out of this. You know, I've had lots of people reach out for me from the Torngat constituents, and you know, they're really looking forward to meeting with me and talking with me and see what I have to offer. So I'm looking forward to that opportunity.
Well, Devin Ryan says he intends to travel to the district of Torngat Mountains next week. He's up against incumbent PC MHA Leela Evans and NDP candidate Patricia Johnson-Castle. What a stormy evening in St. John's. It's definitely a night to stay home, stay safe, and stay warm. More snow coming overnight tonight. Should clear off tomorrow, though, for St. John's. Some stormy weather on the way for Labrador as well. I'll have all those details coming up in the forecast.
This weather forecast is brought to you by Newfoundland and Labrador Tourism. Somewhere out there is a winter with your name on it. Find it now at stayhomeyear.ca.
Well, time now for a look at your weather forecast. I'm filling in for Ashley today, and what a snowy day on the Avalon Peninsula. Snow is continuing all day today, and it will continue tonight. Here's a look at the satellite and radar shot the last 3 hours. We do have a bunch of warnings in place. Winter storm warning in place for the Avalon Peninsula, Bonavista North, and the Bonavista Peninsula. A total of 20 to 35 centimeters of snow coming with this system. We also have a special weather statement in effect from Clarenville up through Green Bay, White Bay. A little less snow there, though, 10 to 15 centimeters expected. And up along the northern peninsula, St. Anthony area, northern peninsula east and Port Saunders, looking at a snowfall warning in effect there, 15 to 25 centimeters. And that will continue on until Saturday morning. So let's look at tonight. Here's what's bringing all of that snow to the Avalon Peninsula and the northeast coast. Going to continue for most of the evening and head northwest throughout the night towards Labrador. You can see for the Avalon Peninsula some clearing starting to happen in the morning and some heavier snow moving in for the St. Anthony area. So tonight 2 to 4 centimeters for the northern peninsula there, about 5 to 10 for the Gander area, 15 to 25 centimeters of snow still to come for the St. John's Avalon Peninsula area. Marystown looking at 5 centimeters of snow and some light flurries for the west coast. Also, quite strong winds along with this system as well. For Labrador, mostly cloudy skies for Lab City, a wind chill of -38 overnight tonight, and looking at a few flurries along the coast with some stormy weather still to come. We do have a snowfall warning in effect. This is for tomorrow in through the weekend. 20 to 40 centimeters of snow expected from Rigolette down through Norman Bay, Lodge Bay from Friday throughout the weekend. So still a little bit of uncertainty with this system, but you can see for Friday afternoon, clearing mostly for the Avalon Peninsula and much of the island. A few scattered flurries there for the west coast, and that snow moving in for the southeastern portion of Labrador. So for tomorrow, St. John's area, we could see about 2 centimeters of snow in the morning, and then mostly a cloudy day coming, and winds will ease as well in the afternoon. A westerly wind, 20 gusting to 40, about 2 more centimeters coming for the Clarenville area as well. Some heavier snow throughout central areas. Grand Falls, Windsor, Gander looking at 5 to 10 centimeters of snow tomorrow. Harbor Breton, a mix of sun and cloud of -1 as the high. A few flurries for the west coast. Corner Brook looking at a high of -4 with some light northwesterly winds. So tomorrow's when the heavier snow is going to move in for the northern peninsula. 5 to 10 centimeters for the St. Anthony area. A bit heavier in Mary's Harbor and Cartwright, 10 to 15 centimeters there. For the rest of Labrador and Makkovik, looking at 5 centimeters tomorrow, as well as Happy Valley, Goose Bay, Lab City looking at lots of sunshine and -20 as the high. So looking ahead to Friday night, that's when the heavier snow is really going to start to move in, along with some strong winds for southeastern Labrador, and that's going to persist for most of the weekend. And Lab City, yes, looking at seeing some of that as well. High winds and some snowfall there, as well as the rest of Labrador. Temperatures hovering around the freezing mark, though. For the island, looking at some flurries for the west coast, and could see some flurries on Saturday as well for the east, and -4 as the high there. So looking ahead to Sunday, you can see the snow continuing in Labrador as well along the northern peninsula. So St. John's area looking at mostly cloudy day and -2 as the high. Some snowfall for the Corner Brook area, and those winds you can see continuing for the northern peninsula as well as for most of Labrador. Lab City looking at -5 as the high on Sunday. So as we move into the work week, we have some more snowfall coming for Labrador as well as parts of the island and the Avalon Peninsula. So could see some flurries on Monday and Tuesday. Temperatures around the freezing mark for central areas. Looking at a very similar story with flurries on Monday and Tuesday. Saturday and Sunday not looking too bad, though. For the West Coast, some flurries as well. Tuesday looking at a mainly cloudy day with a high of around 0. And for eastern Labrador, temperatures staying around the freezing mark, as you can see, for the next few days. And then Tuesday -4 as the high with some flurries. Lots of snow as well for western Labrador, so enjoy that sunshine tomorrow while you can. So here's a look at our weather photo of the day. I just couldn't resist. I mean, how could you? How could you resist? Here is someone who absolutely loves the snow. Nicole Emberley sent this in to us. Thank you so much. This is Finley the dog who's out enjoying the snow. So thank you very much, Nicole, for that wonderful picture.
Welcome back to Here Now. A lack of transparency, lack of real collaboration, window dressing, Those are all words that Mary Shortall used to describe what she saw when she was part of the Premier's economic recovery team.
Yes, that team is tasked with finding solutions to the province's huge financial mess. Now, the president of the Newfoundland and Labrador Federation of Labor walked away from that team, but she signed a confidentiality agreement, so has been tight-lipped about what she heard at the table.
Yeah, Shortall's organization represents 70,000 workers in the province, so her resignation is a blow to government, especially since it came just 10 days before an election call. There are also fears that cuts are coming, since the Liberals have said if they're elected, they'll need to fix the province's fiscal situation.
Well, tonight, the CBC's Jane Adey is here with an interview with Mary Shortall about fear in the public sector.
Mary Shortall, you already spoke about the confidentiality agreement that you had to sign, and you say you can't say much about the team's work because of that agreement. But aren't you saying more by saying very little at this point? I'm just wondering if you have concerns that you've now maybe put fear in the minds of government workers about potential job cuts.
Well, I've thought about that, Jane, and I need to be completely honest too about this. I think that workers' fares have been established for a long time around the outcome of budgets, and especially in such a big task as this, when we're not talking just about the next budget, we're talking about a plan. And if you read the terms of reference, it's a plan going forward that will impact workers and their families and all the people of this province for probably decades to come. So to be honest, I think the workers' fares have been based on past experiences. There's been some tough budgets. There's been a history of workers, especially in the public sector, paying the price for decisions that have been made by governments around the economy. So I think those fares existed anyway. I do believe when you read the terms of reference and the makeup of the team, workers' fares were further entrenched because there is a lot of business representation there. And I think the dominant narrative in the public sphere for the last several months, long before this team existed, there's been a push to look at cuts and look at austerity measures as being part of a way of addressing our fiscal challenges. There's no doubt there's fiscal challenges, but it's not necessarily, one answer that's going to resolve it all the time. And so I think those fares are there anyway.
Let's move on now and talk about the very reason for this economic recovery team. Our financial situation here in the province is the reason for this team. It obviously has a lot to do with the price of oil, but back in the early 2000s, when the Williams government renegotiated the Atlantic Core deal, this province got $2 billion up front. Many people remember Williams arriving at the airport to a hero's welcome. And then in the years after that, we saw the public sector get major raises, 20% over 4 years. Hirings kicked in, the public sector size practically doubled. In 2016, when Finance Minister Cathy Bennett introduced a budget, she called it a culture of spending at that time. Why didn't the unions back then stop and say, wait a minute, this raise and these jobs are great, but as a province, this might not be sustainable? Why didn't they do that then?
Well, I guess it's all part of the same narrative, quite frankly. Around that same time, in 2007, there was a whole series of irresponsible tax cuts as well, if you remember as well. I mean, oil was over $100 a barrel, but even then there was a huge both personal and corporate income tax cuts that were made across the board. They have been touted since then as probably a missed opportunity that turned the biggest mistake that the government ever made, because they missed the opportunity to turn that oil boom into a transformative capital. And it probably has resulted in definitely has resulted in hundreds of millions of dollars cumulatively gone out of the economy. So it's all about, finding that balance between the spending and the cuts. The public sector It's someone likened it then in 2007 to say it was like there was this big party and there was all kinds of spending, tax cuts and stuff that happened, and money going everywhere. And then all of a sudden, after the party, someone had to clean up, so the public sector was called to do it. The public sector had been many years with stagnant wage cuts, and so that increase that they had gotten at that time still was just a catch up to be where they were supposed to be. But when on that whole conversation around is the first thing you do in times when economic recovery, in times when the economy is in a downturn, is the first thing you have to do then is do massive cuts around public services. I know the dominant narrative has also been that the province is spending out of control, that we're spending more on public services per capita than any other province. That has been in there. But when we have done a whole lot of research on this, and we've been talking about what the real issues are and what the real crises are. Obviously, there's fiscal challenges in this province. No one is denying this, and we are all about being part of that solution. I've just been talking about why that's important to us. But it seems to be that the initial response to when we get ourselves in a bind like this is that we have to make massive cuts, that spending is the problem. There's also a big problem out there, and that's one of unemployment. And in our province, we have among the highest levels of unemployment in the country. We're at 13%. We've had lots of thousands of job losses since 2015. We're heading towards higher unemployment. There's also a group of, organizations that don't normally stand behind the labor movement on all of our issues, like the International Monetary Fund, like the World Bank, like the Bank of Canada, like the Conference Board of Canada, like leading economists all over the world who are saying when the economy's in a downspin, cutting jobs is only going to make matters worse. And in fact, the public sector is kind of the group, the place that kind of balances the economy during an economic downturn. It's also a place that gives decent work to a lot of people, that gives decent work to a lot of women, and in a province where the wage gap is at 66 cents, throwing more women onto the unemployment rack and causing that income and gender divide to get even wider is probably not the best economic policy. So our position has always been that, the real crisis here is not so much spending as it is in the choices that the governments are making around their spending, and the number of poor people that we have in this province, the inequality that exists between the rich and poor, between women and men, and that we need a more holistic approach to how we balance our economy.
Okay, let me just throw some numbers at you now based on the Atlantic Institute for Market Studies report from 2019. Newfoundland and Labrador has 109 public servants per 1,000 population. New Brunswick has 85 per 1,000, Nova Scotia 99, and Prince Edward Island has 95 public sector workers per 1,000 population. Does the labor movement accept any responsibility for where we are today financially as a result of those numbers? We have a lot of public sector workers.
Absolutely not. It's how you measure those statistics that AIMS and other organizations like that keep throwing out to us when they say we're spending beyond our means. We have an overinflated public sector. They make too much money. Their pensions are too good. When you break down those numbers, when you really look at it, like I just said, that the money that we spend on public services to provide those services to all the people who need them right across our province, that we don't spend any more any less than the average in Canada as a percentage of our overall spending. Those public sector workers provide those services that people need. Perhaps if we, diversified our economy and we dealt with the issue of high unemployment and underemployment, if we dealt with the low wages that people make, 50,000 people in this province make less than $15 an hour, which is a poverty wage. the majority of them are women. When you look at all those issues, there's a big proportion. We have the highest income gap in Atlantic Canada. That means there's the biggest gap between the rich and the rest of us than any of the other Atlantic provinces that you just cited right there. It's not just about the public sector and their wages. When you look at the wages in the public sector, we've done a comparison with the Atlantic region and the rest of Canada. We're among the lowest, not among the highest. When you look at the population that relies on those services. So how about then that we talk about a more holistic approach to resolving the economic crisis that involves, getting people back to work, improving the public services here, investing in that infrastructure, not just the physical infrastructure, but the social infrastructure it's going to mean that when people come to Newfoundland, they're going to stay in Newfoundland. Why don't we put some increases to the minimum wage, for example, to put more money in people's pockets so that our young workers are not leaving the province, and look at a real job strategy down the road that will help us in all these new tech jobs and new other jobs in the private sector that we're talking about that are really important as well. Why don't we look at our tax system? 81% of the people polled in the Atlantic region, which includes the people in this province, support looking at our tax structure to make sure that the people who can afford to pay more for the top bracket of income in our province. We're way below the Atlantic average, so there is room for the people who have the money to pay more for taxes. I mean, it's such a holistic view. I mean, that the problem with just isolating it to the public sector and public sector workers means we're leaving out all the rest of it. And it's been said by people a lot smarter than me, economists around the world, and organizations, AIM's maybe not one of them, but there are a lot of organizations in this country and around the world, including the Conference Board of Canada, including, the IMF and the UN, who are saying when the economy is bad, you need to invest in public services. It's how we got ourselves out of disparity after World War II. It's how we dealt with the recession in 2009 nationwide. We have to invest in those jobs in order to create other jobs, and we have to keep the economy on a level playing field by making sure that the jobs we have we keep and that we invest in other jobs. And so, putting people out of jobs, driving wages down, forcing people to leave this province, those are not going to help our economy. Making people poorer than they already are, that's not going to help our economy. So we need to look at a more holistic view and look at the public sector in terms of making it more efficient, not in just cutting across the board, and then not having people have access to the services that they need.
All right, Mary Shortle, I really appreciate hearing your thoughts on all of this. I want to thank you for your time.
Thank you, Jane. Thanks.
An important conversation. Thanks so much to Jane Adey for that interview. Jane will have more feature interviews for us throughout the provincial election campaign, and will explore some of the challenges facing the province.
Hi, so my name is Yak Sharanwala. I am a second year computer science student at MUN and I come from India. And the best thing I like about Newfoundland is the people there. The moment I landed there in St. John's, I knew like this is the place I want to settle down and have my life here. But there's a major concern there. There's not a lot of opportunities for students like us. So let's compare it to mainland cities like Halifax, Nova Scotia, Toronto, Ontario. There are a lot of companies here that can offer like employment opportunities to students like us. Now I know in St. John's we have Verifin, who was recently acquired by NASDAQ. But the thing is, they're the only game player in the city. Like they're the only big player. Now that, in my opinion, does not serve hundreds or possibly thousands of students graduating from MUN. And my biggest concern for the elections would be, what is the government doing to tackle the situation? Like everyone prefers, even I would prefer to move back to mainland if there are no opportunities because, well, everyone likes to have a good life, right? So, yes, that's my main concern, I would say, about the recent elections. Like, what is the government going to do for students like us?
And we're going to be hearing from more voices in the coming weeks as we get closer to the election campaign. And with that election looming, the Liberals have been making many promises that involve spending more money. So how will leader Andrew Furey face the financial crisis and get spending under control? Well, Here Now's Mark Quinn asked him that earlier today.
First of all, we need short, medium, and long-term strategies to deal with the fiscal gap that we're currently facing. I mean, it's no secret. There's by our estimate, an $800 million fiscal gap that's been booked by other governments year after year. We need the courage to kind of look at that and fix that. But we can't do that until we kind of grapple and tackle the immediate threat, which is Muskrat Falls. I didn't create Muskrat Falls. Many of us didn't create Muskrat Falls. But the economic impact and the fiscal burden of Muskrat Falls is now real. We need to work with our federal partners to ensure that we have a new financial deal for Muskrat Falls so that it doesn't unduly harm Newfoundland and Labradorians.
You're looking for a mandate to govern.
That's right, and that's a great example of why we need a mandate. Sorry, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Look, the public doesn't know what they're getting into. I mean, they don't know what you're going to do to reduce spending or how you're going to deal with Muskrat Falls yet. Is it premature to be asking for a mandate?
Not at all. I mean, I'm sitting across from the federal government trying to renegotiate Muskrat Falls, the fiscal deal with Muskrat Falls. I think you need a mandate to do that. You need a mandate from the people. I'm very happy that I've had a mandate from the Liberal Party. I'm honored to have a mandate from the people of Humber-Gross-Mourne, but now I need a mandate for the people to sit at the table with the federal government and to discuss with the people broadly after all the recommendations and ideas so that we can together move forward. This is not the time for fear-mongering and divisive politics. We've seen how that's worked in the past in other jurisdictions. I personally don't believe that that's the time, that's appropriate style of politicking right now for Newfoundland and Labrador.
Is it possible to get Moy Green to do a quicker report?
Of course, that's why we asked for an interim report in February, but the report's not due until the end of May, and I'm not going to rush these people who have been given up voluntarily of their time and expertise. I think this is a solid decision-making process. We're going to gather evidence, broadly consult with all stakeholders. Every person in Newfoundland and Labrador will have an opportunity to have a say, should they choose. And then we're going to table that to the House of Assembly. That's a very open and transparent process, in my opinion.
Is there a reason why the election couldn't wait till after the interim report came out?
I thought, given the timing of I said I wouldn't call an election in 2020, I didn't. I said I wouldn't call an election before the budget, I didn't. And I said I'd call an election in 2021. Looking at the COVID numbers and what was happening around the world right now, I thought that now's the time to call an election.
Developing story out of Ottawa tonight. Governor General Julie Payette is leaving her post. Sources have confirmed to CBC that Payette is resigning following an independent report into reports of abusive workplace behavior at Rideau Hall. Sources who've been briefed on the review say it's scathing. The review was launched last July after CBC reported staff accounts of Julie Payette and her chief secretary belittling, bullying, and openly criticizing employees at Rideau Hall. There are reports of Payette throwing temper tantrums. More than 50 people took part in the review. Both Payette and her secretary are reported to have hired legal counsel. An update on the Pfizer vaccine. On Tuesday, Ottawa confirmed Canada wouldn't be getting any doses next week. Today, the Vaccine Task Force says vials are coming early next month, 80% less than originally expected.
Pfizer informed us this morning that we can expect around 79,000 doses for the first week of February. So despite this bump on the road, Pfizer continues to assure us that they're on track to meet the total allocation of 4 million doses to Canada by the end of March. To that end, we expect a rapid scale-up of deliveries in the upcoming weeks following this current supply disruption.
In his first full day as president, Joe Biden turned his attention to a worsening health crisis. He signed 10 executive orders to strengthen the fight against COVID-19, and in an address, he struck a hopeful note.
We will get through this. We will defeat this pandemic. And to a nation waiting for action, let me be the clearest on this point. Help is on the way.
A national plan will inoculate 50 million Americans during Biden's first 100 days in office. There will be more testing, and emergency legislation will be brought in to increase the production of masks and other supplies. Visitors will have to provide a negative COVID-19 test result upon entry into the country. They'll also have to quarantine when they arrive. quick recap of the weather before we leave you tonight. The stormy weather will continue on the Avalon Peninsula. Another 15 to 25 centimeters of snow with high winds expected overnight. Should start to clear off, though, in the morning. Then a mainly cloudy day, 5 to 10 centimeters for the northeast coast tonight. And for Labrador, looking pretty calm in Lab City with some cloud cover tonight. A wind chill of minus 38. And some stormy weather moving into Labrador there tomorrow. Ashley will be back tomorrow with all those details.
It's our first winter storm. Love it or hate it, the snow is here for Eastern Newfoundland.
Good night, everyone.
Have a good night.